Well, backed by popular demand, although I'm not sure there was really probably any demand for it, we're going to do My Thanksgiving Song. It's to the tune, it's very familiar, it's to the tune of Deck the Halls with Boughs of Holly, but just different words. And if you would like to sing along on the fa la 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 part, by all means go for it. All right. 'Tis the season of Thanksgiving, la 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 la. Fun and food and all the turkey, la 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 la. Pumpkin pie and oyster dressing, la 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 la. Now we watch to see God's blessing, la 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 la. Very well done. On your part. All right, 4 more days. Not to worry, it all gets done, but 4 more days till we gather together to ask the Lord's blessing, as one of our favorite hymns says. We remember the story of Thanksgiving. In years past, school children dressed up like pilgrims and Native Americans and ate food that was traditionally prepared for that first Thanksgiving. Not turkey and dressing, but maize and other vegetables eaten to survive the cold winter of Virginia in 1610. That year, the colony of Jamestown had been reduced from 409 settlers to about 60. The survivors prayed for help, not knowing when or how it might come, and when help did arrive, in the form of a ship filled with food and supplies from England, a prayer meeting was called and to give thanks to God. And this is what we still do today. Give thanks to God as families and friends gather together for a meal. Just as life has changed since the 1600s, celebrating Thanksgiving has changed and continues to grow and evolve through those changes. So what does Thanksgiving Day look like at your house? Will your family gathering look like a Norman Rockwell painting? Or will it be a little busier and a little noisier than that? In Thanksgivings past, my family would gather together in Ohio, and when the meal was ready, the table would just be groaning with so much food. The TV would be on in the other room with the end of the Macy's Day Parade or the start of the Detroit Lions football game. The children would all sit at one table, apart from the grown-ups, and with the kids who didn't want to sit with the little kids' table anymore. Boyfriends and girlfriends, maybe the same faces from last year or new faces around the table, but all are welcome. And all are encouraged to join in the celebration and take as much turkey and fixings home with you as you possibly can. Adults will take a moment to look around the table and give silent praise to God for all who are sitting there and for the ones who are no longer with us this year. And somewhere in the midst of it comes the best moment of all, that pause, that hush. The last ones come to the table and sit down, and that air of expectancy, the decision made of who will offer the Thanksgiving prayer for the meal, for the family, and for all the other things to be thankful for. And that moment or moments when it all comes together, when it sinks in with meaning, is special. Thanksgiving is a time for remembrance, a time to be thankful, a time to honor God. The 3rd chapter of Ecclesiastes starts with, "For everything there is a season, and a time for everything, every matter under heaven." And let me think about that word, season. I count it as a blessing to live in a place where the seasons make a noticeable change. Fall and winter look so different from each other and from spring and summer. And I know some of you would argue for a little less winter, while others would wish for a little less summer. But each season is unique. It's now the harvest season. All is safely gathered in before the winter storms begin. And in thinking about the seasons, there are other seasons we experience. Along with the seasons of the earth, we go through the seasons of life. From birth to babyhood is a season. From childhood to adolescence is a season. The adult years and the years dealing with someone going through their adolescence is a season. The season of adulthood moves into the mature years, and each season of life has its own joys and sorrows, highs and lows, good times and not so good times. Sometimes the change of seasons comes slowly, almost without notice, being unaware until it's upon us. And other seasons, the change comes so swiftly and more dramatically, but each season is unique. We also experience the seasons of the church calendar. Next week it'll be Advent, followed by the season of Lent and Easter. We've been through the season of Pentecost, which now ends with Thanksgiving. The early Hebrew people marked their year with festivals and seasons, if you will. Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread were celebrated to remember the night that the angel of death passed over the Hebrew households. The Festival of Weeks, or Pentecost, was observed for 50 days after the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. It marked the end of the harvest and the beginning of the offering for the first fruits. The Festival of the Tabernacles, or Booths, to commemorate Israel's wandering in the desert, and was preceded by the Day of Atonement, a day set aside for the cleansing of sins. These early people marked the passing of the year, observing, celebrating, and remembering, because each season is unique. But there is one thing through all the seasons of the earth, of life, of the church, one thing that remains constant. Through it all, God is. With our eyes turned to the season of Thanksgiving, let's take a look at Paul's second letter to the Corinthian church. He's writing about giving. God gives the farmer the seed to plant, and from it comes bread to eat. In other words, God is in the whole process from sowing to harvesting. To the outcome that is produced is thanksgiving to God. The acknowledgement that God is in the season of planting and nurturing. God is in the harvest. God is in every season. And Paul reminds these early Christian people that the gifts they have offered to those in need, much like the offering for the food pantry and the money that we bring to help brothers and sisters in our community or those who are in need, is indeed a way to give thanks and praise to God. You will be glorifying God through your generous gifts, writes Paul. The readers of Paul's letters are encouraged that there will be opportunities to do good things for others, because out of that, a great harvest of generosity is produced. And out of that, we give our thanks to God. Being generous and giving is one way for us to express our thanks to God. But there are other ways to also show our thankfulness. When we worship and pray. When we come together to share a meal or work on a project together. When we gather around the table on Thursday and take a moment to remember and give thanks. We are a people who have been given many gifts and have much to be thankful for. And I doubt anyone would argue that the single most greatest gift God has given us is the gift of His Son, Jesus Christ. At just the right season, Jesus was born into a very imperfect world. And through the seasons of his life, Jesus came to prepare for the ultimate sacrifice, his death on a cross to take away the sin of the world. And in this, and in ways too numerous to count, God, through Jesus, has blessed the lives of each one of us here. Thanksgiving is that reminder to us of all that God has done in creation, in the world, and through the Word. The thought of Jesus as God's gift to us is the central theme throughout the whole New Testament. And our central response is to give thanks. There's a story told about a woman in her mid-80s who was housebound and frail, and yet she still had an attitude of gratitude about her. One of her favorite hymns is Count Your Blessings. Do you know that one? The chorus goes, count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. Well, the woman remarked to a friend of hers that she stopped counting her blessings one by one. And with a smile she said, my blessings are so many, I'm weighing them ton by ton. Thanksgiving is each day of our lives. It doesn't have a beginning that we need to wait for or a date when it's over, but to be thankful for every moment that we are given life. And maybe that's Paul's point here. When we have a loving and generous spirit, we will reap a harvest of love and kindness. And so my hope is that as you sit down to this Thursday around the table, filled with all the good things to eat and the people you love, you remember God, that you remember Paul's words, to thank God for his Son, a gift too wonderful for words.